Welcome to the Global Reader. Today, we embark on a journey through history, geopolitics, and colossal engineering, focusing on one of the most crucial waterways in the world, the Suez Canal. This 193-kilometer artificial river, cutting through the Egyptian desert, connects the Mediterranean Sea to the Red Sea. Its existence fundamentally rewrote the global map of trade and power. For centuries, the long, dangerous voyage around Africa's Cape of Good Hope was the only maritime link between Europe and Asia. The Suez Canal, however, eliminated 7,000 kilometers of travel, shrinking the world and launching a paradigm shift in global logistics. Our English focus today is mastering prepositions in time phrases. You will notice how we use prepositions in, on, by, for during, since, and after to precisely locate events on the timeline of history. By observing the story of this strategic chokepoint, you will gain the vocabulary to discuss global trade and the grammatical tools to talk about historical timelines with accuracy and fluency. Chapter 1. The Ancient Dream and the Precedent. The idea of linking the Mediterranean and Red Seas is not a modern one. For millennia, Egyptian pharaohs dreamt of eliminating the arduous land journey across the Isthmus of Suez. During the reign of Pharaoh Senusret III, around 1850 BC, the first significant precedent was set. A canal was dug, not connecting the two seas directly, but linking the Nile River to the Red Sea. This initial infrastructure allowed barges to move goods from the Mediterranean down the Nile and eventually into the Red Sea. For several dynasties, this system remained partially operational, supporting trade between Egypt and the Arabian Peninsula. Later, by the 6th century BC, the Persian Emperor Darius the Great rested and expanded the ancient waterway. His inscription proudly proclaimed his work, documenting the movement of ships from Egypt to Persia. However, by the 8th century AD, the canal systems fell into disrepair. The lack of constant excavation meant the shifting sands of the desert, aided by silt from the Nile, slowly reclaimed the route. For the next 1,000 years, the dream remained just that, a dream confined to old maps and historical accounts. Until the rise of European imperialism in the 19th century, the natural barrier of the isthmus remained firm. The long sea route around Africa guaranteed Britain's mastery of the seas, as it controlled key harbors along the way to its vast Indian empire. Any change to this geography would spark a massive geopolitical dispute. Chapter 2. The impetus and the concession. The modern impetus for the canal arrived in the mid-19th century. Napoleon Bonaparte's expedition to Egypt in 1798 had brought with it engineers who confirmed the feasibility of a direct cut. But the project was delayed for decades due to a crucial miscalculation about the difference in sea levels between the Mediterranean and the Red Sea, and more importantly, due to intense British skepticism. The man who finally brought the dream to reality was Ferdinand de Lesseps, a retired French diplomat. De Lesseps had served in Egypt and developed a personal rapport with Said Pasha, the Ottoman viceroy of Egypt. In 1854, during a hunting trip, de Lesseps presented his detailed plans to Said Pasha. He proposed a massive, sea-level channel that would require no locks. On November 30, 1854, Said Pasha granted de Lesseps the concession, the exclusive right to form a company and build the canal. The concession document established the Compagnie Universelle du Canal Maritime de Suez, guaranteeing the company control of the canal's operations for 99 years after the opening date, before reverting to Egyptian sovereignty. For the British Empire, this concession represented a terrifying threat to their naval hegemony. They waged a campaign of relentless diplomacy against the project, fearing that a French-built canal would weaken their strategic hold on the route to India. However, de Lesseps' unwavering resolve and popular support in France proved to be a formidable counterbalance to the British opposition. Chapter 3. The epic excavation. The sheer scale of the excavation was monumental. Construction officially began on April 25, 1859, near the future site of Port Said. The logistics of the 10-year project were daunting. Initially, the majority of the labor was performed by Egyptian peasants, often conscripted through the forced labor system known as the corvée. During the first few years, tens of thousands of workers, some estimates place the total at 30,000 men at any given time, used only basic tools, picks, baskets, and shovels. Working under the scorching desert sun for grueling hours, the suffering and mortality rate among these laborers was tragically high, primarily due to cholera and harsh working conditions. By 1863, however, the corvée was abolished due to international pressure, forcing de Lesseps to embrace modern technology. After the shift to free labor, the pace of construction accelerated dramatically. For the remaining years, vast, unprecedented fleets of steam-powered dredging machines were employed. These massive industrial tools could move thousands of cubic meters of sand and earth per day. The engineers had to excavate 74 million cubic meters of earth, mostly through the flat, arid desert and salt marshes. The effort was not just about digging. It was about building new cities from scratch, like Ismailia and Port Said, and laying down infrastructure, including freshwater canals and rail lines, essential for the well-being and sustenance of the workers. By 1869, the unprecedented 10-year effort was nearing its triumphant conclusion. Chapter 4: The Inauguration and the Age of Imperialism. The Suez Canal opened on November 17, 1869, with an extravagant week-long celebration. Heads of state, royalty, and dignitaries from across Europe and the Middle East gathered in Port Said to witness the epochal event. The French Empress Eugénie, on board the yacht L'Aigle, led the inaugural convoy of ships through the Channel. The immediate efficacy of the canal was startling. The voyage from London to Bombay was cut by almost half. Within a decade, the throughput of ships surpassed all initial projections, proving the project's immense commercial viability. Steamships, no longer reliant on favorable winds for the Cape route, became the dominant form of maritime transport. However, the canal quickly became a focal point of geopolitical struggle. The Khedive Ismail Pasha, Said's successor, had overspent heavily on theopening ceremonies and other ambitious projects. By 1875, Egypt was in deep financial crisis. Seizing the opportunity, the British Prime Minister Benjamin Disraeli quickly arranged the acquisition of the Khedive's 44% share in the Canal Company for a sum of £4 million. Over the next 70 years, from 1875 to 1956, the Suez Canal was effectively controlled by two major powers, France and Great Britain. The British regarded the canal as the strategic jugular vein of their empire. Establishing a military garrison and naval presence to ensure its uninterrupted operation and jurisdiction. During both World War I and World War II, the canal's strategic importance was paramount to the Allied war effort. Chapter 5: The Suez Crisis and the Blockade. The era of imperialism over the canal finally ended in the mid-20th century. After World War II, the rise of Arab nationalism presented a direct challenge to British and French sovereignty over the waterway. The pivotal moment arrived on July 26, 1956. During a speech in Alexandria, Egypt's charismatic President Gamal Abdel Nasser dramatically announced the nationalization of the Suez Canal Company. He declared that the revenues from the canal, the annual toll, would fund the construction of the Aswan High Dam. This declaration was met with immense acclaim in the Arab world, but sparked immediate international crises. For Britain and France, this nationalization was an unacceptable threat to their economic and geopolitical interests. They secretly plotted with Israel to launch a military intervention. In October 1956, Israeli forces invaded the Sinai Peninsula. Following this, British and French forces launched an air assault and invasion, claiming they were separating the warring parties and protecting the canal. During the brief, intense conflict known as the Suez Crisis, Egypt responded by sinking ships in the channel, creating a complete blockade. The escalation of the crisis forced the superpowers, the US and the Soviet Union, to intervene. Under intense pressure from the United Nations and the US, the British and French were forced to withdraw after only 8 days of fighting. The outcome was a humiliating political defeat for the old imperial powers and a triumphant affirmation of Egyptian sovereignty. Chapter 6: The Endurance and Contemporary Throughput. The Suez Canal suffered through further dispute and closures in the following decades. Between 1967 and 1975, after the Six-Day War, the canal was completely shut down. It became the literal frontier between the Egyptian and Israeli armies, with numerous ships known as the Yellow Fleet trapped in the Great Bitter lake for the entire period. Not until after the Yom Kippur War in 1973 and subsequent peace efforts was the canal cleared and reopened in 1975. Since the 1970s, the Suez Canal has been managed exclusively by the Suez Canal Authority, SCA. It has undergone continuous expansion and depending to commoditeth ever increasing size of contemporary container ships and massive oil tankers. The efficacy of the canal is measured by its throughput, the volume of maritime traffic it can handle. By the 21st century, roughly 12% of global trade by volume mean 30% of container traffic passes through the waterway annually. World was starkly reminded of the canal's fragility in March 2021 when the massive container ship, the Ever Given, became wedged across channel. For 6 days, the uninterrupted flow of global trade stopped, causing billions of dollars in losses and disrupting global supply chains. This incident reaffirmed the Suez Canal's status as the world's most crucial maritime chokepoint. Today, the canal remains an essential artery, a testament to humane endurance and engineering ambition. It is a silent monument to the power of geopolitical rivalry and the ultimate triumph of sovereignty. Conclusion: Mastering Time and Trade. The history of the Suez Canal is a powerful narrative of conflict, innovation, and trade. From the ancient dreams of the pharaohs to the contemporary throughput of massive ships, it continues to dictate the pace of global commerce. For English learners, this story has showcased the precise use of prepositions in time phrases. You have seen how we use. In 1869, in the 21st century, for years, centuries, and long periods, on November 17, 1869, on July 26, for specific dates, by 1863, by the 20th century, to indicate a deadline or a point in time before which something happens, during the crisis, during World War II, to indicate a period over which an event occurred, for 10 years, for centuries, to express duration. After the Yom Kippur War, since the 1970s, to indicate a point following an event. By practicing these prepositions with the rich geopolitical and maritime vocabulary like chokepoint, nationalization, and efficacy, you can narrate complex historical events with confidence.